Well, I think this is the part my hair is going with today. Alright, I guess we're gonna do that. Solo travel is the best way to travel, in my opinion. It is invigorating and it is just so nice to be able to do what you want to do on your own schedule. But it can also be super overwhelming to figure out how the heck to plan your first solo trip ever. Take it from me, I have been solo traveling since I was 18 years old and I'm still learning things every single day. At the time this video is being uploaded, I am currently on my 6th solo backpacking trip, 4th through Europe, since 2018. So it's safe to say I've learned some things along the way. And I am here today to help you plan your first solo trip that will be the first of many, many solo trips. So stick around and I will share my tips and tricks to get you out traveling the world. Hi, my name is Katie and welcome to Katie Does Travel. I am a solo female backpacker who's a little bit more on the introverted side, and I share my solo travel experiences with you. I like to show that solo travel can be fun and exciting and exhilarating, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert like myself. Now, like I mentioned, I have been on many solo backpacking trips over the past few years, and I'm currently on one right now as I upload this video. Obviously right now when I'm filming it, I am not on the trip. But I am here to share how to really plan that first trip, because it can be very overwhelming, very just, I don't know where to begin. So I'm going to help you begin because my tips are going to help you start today, right now. We're going to start planning your first trip right now. If you like solo travel content, you can subscribe right down below. It is free to do. And then once you hit that subscribe button, hit that bell to be notified when I post a new video. I like to post a new video at least once a week. So without further ado, let's get into the video and let's plan your first solo backpacking trip. So number one, this is where you have to begin in my opinion, is you have to establish your budget. Now you may be thinking, well, why can't I pick where I want to go first and then establish my budget? You can do that, but I've always found that this is kind of the backwards way of thinking of it, because you have to know how much money you have in order to guide where you want to go. So your budget is going to be very unique to you, and it's going to determine where you can go and for how long. So if you have a higher budget, you may be able to go to more expensive places or stay places longer. If you have a lower budget, you might want to search for places that are a little bit more budget friendly and or go somewhere a little bit of a shorter duration of time. Now this isn't to say if you have a high budget you can't go to lower budget places and vice versa, but it's just a general guideline, okay? These are guidelines, these are tips, these aren't hard set rules. I would say a good starting point for a budget is a couple $1,000s, which may be high for some people, but for a couple $1,000 US dollars, I'm speaking because I'm from the US, but that's really going to be a good baseline. But if you have more than that or less than that, you can still certainly travel. But that's just kind of my baseline, a couple thousand just to get you started. Number two, we're still not picking a place yet, but number two is to evaluate your comfort level. So everyone's going to have various comfort levels when it comes to traveling or the idea of solo traveling. Some people are going to be gung-ho and be ready to go, and other people are going to be a little bit more nervous and unsure. So evaluating and being honest with yourself about your comfort level is going to also help you determine a place that might be the best fit for you for your first trip. Now, as you continue to travel, you continue to go on more trips, you're going to become more confident. So you may want to go to some other places that you would never even want to dream of going to when you first start traveling. But the important thing is, for your first trip, you want it to be a positive experience. So you want to make sure that where you go is going to match your comfort level, and your budget. But it's important to understand what your comfort level is. Of course, this is just my suggestion, but this is personally just from my experience through many years of traveling and also just speaking with other travelers along the way. Definitely just important to understand and analyze your comfort level. And this is your absolute first solo trip, which is why you clicked on this video. Thank you. Then you may want to go somewhere that's a little bit more comfortable, and we'll talk about that later. Okay, step 3. Finally, now you can start to decide where you want to go. So the world is your oyster. Well, within your budget and your comfort level. Now, this is just my suggestion. Before your first trip ever, I really suggest either a weekend trip or a week trip. Now, some people are just gonna go for broke and they're gonna go for months and months or maybe a year at a time. But for your very, very first trip, I would really consider just going somewhere for a weekend and going for a week. And I'll explain why a little bit later, but just keep that in mind. For your first trip, keep it shorter. For young travelers who've never been traveling outside of going on family trips, really do recommend this. And this is why. When you go on your first trip, it's kind of like a trial run of sorts. You get to kind of work the kinks out. So you get to work out your comfort level on public transit. Maybe you're staying in a hostel for the first time. Maybe you are flying for the first time by yourself. Maybe you've never had a meal by yourself in a restaurant. So it's just a way to evaluate your comfort level and work out those kinks for your first trip. Because then once you become an expert or feel like an expert, then you can go on longer trips and take what you learned from your first trip or your first few trips and take it on a longer trip and feel super comfortable, and you're going to be the expert traveler and people are going to be asking you for tips. So it's just something that I super recommend. Like I said, I've been traveling solo since I was 18, but it really wasn't until I was 28 where I really started to do a lot of solo international trips for months on end. Prior to that, I would be like week or 2 week trips solo, and while I felt very comfortable, there were still things that when I got international that were very intimidating to me. Like, it took me years just to feel comfortable reading a bus schedule. Like trains, metros, whatever I could do, but the bus was very intimidating to me for whatever reason. But my point is, do a shorter trip to learn a bit before you go on a long trip, and then you're an expert. If this is also your first trip and you're going for a weekend or even a week, I would really just suggest going to one place versus jumping around. Like, for instance, I would say, like, if you're like, let's say you live in the UK, like, go to London for a week, but don't do like London and Paris. You can certainly do it, but, you know, really maybe just stick to London or stick to Paris and just learn there and just soak in the culture too, you know. The world will always be there. You'll always be able to go places. So just feel comfortable in one place. Don't bounce around as much. Another thing to consider, this still goes with point 3, but another thing to consider is if you want to go on a group trip. Now, I personally haven't done a large group trip, but this, other than in high school, but this is really something that seems to be very popular, especially with younger travelers. So companies like Welcome to Travel for Australia, or True Travels for various places around the world, or Med Sailors for sailing trips in Croatia and Greece and Turkey. There's Kontiki, there's EF, there's all these different companies out there that offer group trips depending on where you're going. So take a look at those. There are pros and cons to both. You know, the pro is that it takes a little bit of the planning out for you and a little bit of the guesswork out, and you're kind of guaranteed to meet people right off the bat. But the con is that you don't have as much flexibility within the itinerary because they set it. So definitely weigh the pros and cons, but it is definitely something a lot of people do. And I know personally for myself, I want to go on a Med Sailors trip. I have been wanting to do it for years, but maybe next year, because I think it would be really fun to go sailing. I would love to go back to Croatia or Greece, or even go to Turkey for the first time. So anyway, definitely something to consider. Now, if you're in this process and you really can't decide on a place and you need some suggestions, I have a video coming up soon, or maybe it's already up by the time you click this video. If it is, I will put it up here. This video is going to have some suggestions for places where you should visit for your first solo trip. These are my opinions and also just opinions from other travelers I have talked with over the years. Number 4, research and book any flights or other transportation you need to get to your destination. accommodations, and also research to see if you need any visas for where you're visiting. So depending on where you've decided to go, you may need a visa. You may need a visitor's visa. Some countries you will need one, some you don't. Some you need to apply ahead of time. Some you can apply and get your visa right on arrival. So it does depend, but take 5 minutes, 10 minutes just to research it. And if you do need to apply ahead of time, give yourself enough time and then maybe a little extra time to apply, because it's so important, because otherwise you're not gonna be able to go. But again, some places you don't need a visa, so just look at the rules for where you want to go to see if you need a visa. Also start researching your flights if you need a flight to where you're going. So there's a couple different resources I have for this. Number 1 is to check Skyscanner, and 2 to check Google Flights. Set Google Flight alerts. Basically, you can go into Google Flights, put where you're leaving from, where you want to go to, whether it's a round trip or a one way. And you can put in a date. You can also put in multiple dates, and then you can toggle on notify when there's changes. So this is a great way just to kind of see what the cost for a flight will be. If you have some flexibility, you can also score a great deal on a flight. So if instead of flying out on a Sunday, you can fly out on a Wednesday, you might be able to save hundreds and hundreds of dollars or euros or whatever your currency is on a flight. So definitely do that. Personally, I don't book my flights through Google Flights or Skyscanner. I usually just book it directly through the airline. But coming back to that, you just want to book directly through the airlines if you can. It saves a lot of frustration if your flights get canceled. That's happened to me twice this year. But it really does help, versus if you book these third-party sites, they might not be able to help you. So just something to consider. Another thing you can sign up for are flight alert newsletters like Pomelo, I think I'm saying that right, flights. They email multiple times a week, great round-trip deals to destinations around the world. So definitely, I'll leave that down below. That's not sponsored, but it is definitely a great resource. I have not personally booked anything with any other flight deals yet, but they are always very tempting. So anyway, definitely check out, there's other, I'm sure, newsletters, but definitely check that out, because you could score some great deals and maybe on places you'd never considered for future trips. Also, just a note about when to book flights. I typically book my international flights at least 6 to 8 weeks out. Sometimes sooner, sometimes later than that, but And then for domestic flights, for me, domestics within the US, that's anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks before my flight. But again, everyone's a little bit different, and that's why Google Flights is very good, because it also tracks trends, so you kind of can know, okay, when you should book the flight. If you're taking a train or a bus to where you are going, put the route into Rome to Rio. It gives you options on these. It also gives you flight options, but I use it a lot for bus and train options from one point to another. And you can book directly through the app, but well, it kind of depends. Sometimes I book through the app, sometimes I book with the carrier. But anyway, I've never had a problem with it, and it definitely does help in just your planning. For trains, sometimes I'll book it really far in advance. Like for Eurostar, I'll book. The further out you book, or the earlier you book, the better the rate. But for like regional trains, I usually wait for a couple days or even the day of. For buses, kind of the same thing, a couple days before, unless it's a very popular route, then maybe like a week or two before. But that's just me. Everyone has their own preferences. You'll figure it out, but that's just kind of my rule of thumb. For accommodations, determine if you want to stay in a hostel, in a hotel, or an Airbnb, etc. Now, personally, for travelers, I recommend a hostel, but I understand the nervousness that comes with a hostel. When I first started solo backpacking, I actually stayed in a lot of Airbnbs. I stayed in a couple hostels, but I just didn't really like the experience. But as time has gone on, and actually going to Australia really helped me understand hostels a little bit better. And I say understand, I know it sounds silly, but for me as an introvert, it took me a bit of time to really figure out the vibe of hostels and how to socialize within them. But if you want to go the Airbnb route or hotel route, that's perfectly fine. But I do recommend a hostel If you're an introvert like myself, look into private rooms. I do love a good private room at a hostel because you get your own space. Then you also get the social activities and the ability to meet people. But you can also, if that's not within your budget, or some places are just ridiculously expensive, you can look into booking a smaller dorm room. So maybe that's a 4-bed or 6-bed versus these like 10, 12, 15, 32 beds. Like I could never do that. Kind of my max is probably about 8. That's just my comfort level. But you know, you do what's within your budget and your comfort level, but that's just my suggestion. So to book hostels, I like to look at Hostel World and also booking.com. I have affiliate links down below if you want to check those out and book using those links. It helps me out. Thank you. And if you want to book Airbnbs, I use the Airbnb app and also the website, but there are a lot of different ways to book accommodations, but I've had great success with booking.com, Airbnb, and Hostel World. So just my tips on where to book with. And these are my notes. I keep flashing them sometimes. Number 5 is to start researching things to do. This is probably the most fun part of planning a trip. But what I want to say here is find places to do or things you're really excited for, but don't overwhelm yourself. And this is why. The beauty of solo travel is the beauty of being able to do whatever you want when you want to do it. So you might be going to one place, like maybe like a palace, and then walk by this coffee shop and you want to check that out later. Versus if you have everything so planned out and you're like, oh, I want to do the coffee shop, but I have to go from the castle to the cathedral to this to that. With solo travel, have a couple things that you really want to do, you want to highlight that day, and then leave everything else to kind of just figure out as you wander. As I've traveled more, I've planned less. I used to be a big planner. I had to have my days planned out every single hour, and now I'm like, okay, today I want to go to this museum, and then we'll see what happens after that. So that's just how I approach it. Also, it's nice if you meet someone at the hostel and they're like, hey, we're going here today, do you want to come? If you have that flexibility, you can really make some good friends and see some amazing sights still. My favorite way to research things to do are number 1, YouTube vlogs. And this is also a shameless plug for all my travel vlogs. If you want to watch them, I have playlists. But going on YouTube and typing in Brussels vlog or Brussels things to do in 48 hours or whatever, that can really help you figure out some things that are popular to do where you're going, or maybe some spots that you didn't know about and you want to do because you saw someone do this and you're like, wow, that looks really cool. Another thing is TikTok's a great resource, or Instagram Reels, great resource as well. Blogs are also great. Another thing I really like to do is I like to go onto Google Maps to the city that I'm visiting. So we'll just go with the Brussels example again. And I will just zoom in and out and find interesting places and be like, okay, maybe I'll do that. So that's really helped me. That also actually helps me plan my days out once I'm over there, because I'm like, okay, I want to stick to this particular area today, and there's these 3 things that I might want to check out while I'm in this area of the city. So that's what I like to do. Google Maps has really become my favorite way to honestly find things to do, but also, again, YouTube videos and TikToks and Reels are a great way as well. Number 6 is to organize all of your plans in a common spot. So I like to do this a couple different ways. So number 1, I like to have a Google Doc or a Word document, and I just like to have everything, just a running list of everything. So places I'll be, where I'm transiting to, if I'm transiting that day, where I'm staying, my accommodation, if I have a flight, if I have a train, whatever. I like to just put it into a Google Doc, and that just gives me an kind of arching view of everything, which really helps me out when I'm initially planning too. I can also put all my confirmation numbers in there as well. You can also use an app like TripIt to put everything in a digital form on your phone through an app. I actually like to do both TripIt and Google Doc sheet, just because I like to have it in 2 different ways. TripIt is really nice because I can just quickly open the app and find it, but I like also having the running list because I find it easier in the document to change things versus in TripIt. Not that it's difficult, but I don't know, it's just the way my brain works. But I say use both, honestly, because they both have their value. And yeah, but overall, you just want to have an idea. Again, don't over plan, but you just want to have an idea of where you're going, where you're going to be next, and all your reservation stuff. Also recommend in your email, so whether you use Gmail, whatever, put a folder. I have one that says travel, and I throw all my confirmation emails, all of just my flight itinerary, etc. I just throw it into that folder, so if I ever need to access it when I'm on the trip, I can just pull that up. And then once I know that I absolutely don't need it anymore, I would just delete it, just to make things a little bit easier to find. Number 7 is to make your packing list. So at least a week out from your trip, I suggest planning out your packing list. A really great way to do this are to find packing videos for places that you're going. So like I have my Australia one. So definitely that's a good starting point, but just map everything out and then start just putting things aside. You don't want to leave this to the last second because then you're going to be stressing. So personally, I like starting my list about a week out and then figuring out what I have, what I still need to get, and just putting everything aside to pack later. Remember, you don't need to pack a ton. Laundry is usually available in most places that you visit, and 9 times out of 10, if you forget something, you could probably find it wherever you're going. So don't stress out. Believe me, I've stressed out in the past, and now I'm just like, you know, if I forget something, I'll just grab it when I'm there. Not a big deal. I'm personally team carry-on roller bag or backpack, depending on where I'm going, but you assess what you need and your comfort level. But remember, you always need a little bit less than what you actually think you need. So just keep that in mind. But I am a big carry-on fan, but if you do check a bag, get an air tag to track your bag, just in case. But I'm team carry-on for life. And then a couple days out, start packing. And I say a couple days out because just in case you're packing and you realize, oh, I need shampoo or I need something, whatever, you have time. You're not like scrambling the morning of your flight to try to get everything. It's all about ease here. So just pack a couple days out and you will be a lot happier, I promise. Number 8, relax the night before your trip. Congratulations, you have made it to the night before your trip. Yay. So just take some time, have a good dinner, relax, watch some Netflix or whatever streaming platform you prefer, and just chill out. Also, if you have not checked into your flight and you're flying, just do that real quick. But afterwards, you can relax. So just chill out. You've made it this far and you're going to have the most incredible trip. So those are my 8 tips for planning your first solo travel experience. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe down below. It is free, and turn on that bell notification to be notified when I post the next video. I usually post a new video at least once a week, sometimes twice a week if I'm feeling very happy or have a lot to show you. But anyway, please follow me on my social media channels. They are here on the screen. And that's going to be it for now. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Remember to wander far and wander often. Bye! Ooh, I have another tip that I cannot believe I didn't put it in here. Buy travel insurance. Make sure. So this is like tip like 8B or whatever. Buy travel insurance. I'm putting this here at the end, but buy travel insurance. I use World Nomads, but there's a lot out there. So definitely buy travel insurance. You will thank me because it has come in handy a few times. But anyway, that's a free tip if you stuck around to the end.
Was it the voice? Was it the fire burning in me? All of the noise turned into choirs of harmony.